Hello guys, welcome back to the SAS Certified Specialist Prep Guide Base Programming for SAS 9.4. So we're still in chapter 2. In today's video, we'll talk about referencing SAS file. So referencing SAS file. So we can reference SAS file that are permanent or those stored temporarily. So first, to reference a permanent SAS dataset in our SAS programs, we use two-level name consisting of the library name and the dataset name. So the general format is libref.dataset. So the libref in here is the assigned library wherein the datasets are stored. So for example, our directory is this one, the blue. So in this directory, there are a collection of SAS files here. For example, the admit, the finance, the insure. So we first define the library name by live name statement. So we will talk about that in the next lessons. Then once we assign the library name, we then reference the dataset using two-level name. So the libref is cert, for example, and the dataset name is admit. Yeah. So remember that a period is the one separating the libref from the dataset. Next is referencing temporary SAS files. So temporary SAS files are those that exist in the libref work. So to reference temporary SAS files, we can either use the two-level name where the libref is work. So when it is work, we do not need to assign the live name because it is automatically assigned during the start of a session. So as an example, I already hit up the SAS Studio, and when we go to the library, I have not executed any code yet, but the work is already there. So you can specify the two-level name first with the work and then the dataset name. So here's the example. Work is the libref and test is the dataset. So alternatively, we can use one level name to reference a file that is temporary. So if we omit the libref work and just for example put test, uh, it's also referencing by default the work library. Yeah, so maybe I can show you how is that. So I'll try to create a sample dataset. Yeah, so we can create a two dataset as an example. So if I execute these codes, both datasets should appear in the library work. So as you can see, we either use the two-level name to reference the work or the one-level name, which is to omit the libref part. It automatically goes to the work library. Okay? Yeah, so moving on. I think that's pretty straightforward. Rules for SAS name. So by default, the following rules apply to the names of SAS dataset, variables, and libraries. So they must begin with a letter or an underscore. So for example, you cannot assign a library that begins with a number by default. They can continue with any combination of numbers or letters or underscore. So yeah, then they can be 1 to 32 characters long. So this is the case in SAS variables and SAS dataset names. So SAS library names can be 1 to 8 characters long. So up to 8 characters only for libref definitions. So maybe let's try to test some examples. So first, they must begin with a letter A to C. So maybe I'll show you when we try to create a dataset that is not a letter. So we have the test example, right? So 88, A equals 1, run. So if I use the number, it should throw an error. Yeah, so it's not allowed. And if we try underscore 88, it should work because we've still followed the rule. Yeah, so in the library, the underscore 88 should be in there. Okay. So yeah, they can continue. They can be 1 to 32 characters long. So let's try to put some random numbers here. Check how long is this one. So how to know that line 6 to 40, so like 34. So when we run this, it should throw an error. Yeah, so we had exceeded the 32 length. So yeah, there may be cases where you may exceed this. For example, if you have requirements that needs to have longer name, but I don't know in case when you use SAS already in your work if you can exceed this. But I think 32 is pretty big room for uh, SAS dataset name. So I think you had a lot of combinations, so that you can exhaust before you exceed this 32 character length. Okay, enough that. Moving on. So we had here the valid var name equals system option. So SAS has various rules for variable names. You set these rules using the valid var name equals system option. Valid var name specified the rules for valid SAS variables name that can be created and processed during SAS session. So the syntax is valid var name equals, we can use either v7, uppercase, or any. So v7 is the default. So let me show you quickly that. Maybe it's here. So as I mentioned before, the SAS help contains views for certain options as well. So let's try to check that. If we had here the valid var name, or don't know, it's not sorted. So let's just let me just check that. You'll learn about so let's check if it will show. No, it's any. So in the documentation I checked yesterday, it's v7, but in the SAS Studio it's any. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is valid var name can be used depending on your business requirements, for example. So let's quickly skim through this possible values. So v7, so it's the same one, 32 characters long. So must begin with a letter of the Latin alphabet, which is the A to Z. So if you're in Germany, for example, you have the umlaut or the other letters, the S set. You cannot use that as a letter in the variable name. I mean the first character. So trailing blanks are ignored. The variable name alignment is left justified. So if you had blanks in the variable name, they are ignored. A variable name cannot contain blank. So yeah, so if you put blank, you will have an issue. So a variable name can contain mixed case letters. So when you define the variable name, the casing does not matter. So for example, AA equals 1, run. So let's try that. Yeah, so AA is the same as AA. So let's try to print this. For example, so as you can see, I used the print procedure. So we will talk about this in the future. I used the var statement and I asked it the variable AA be printed. So I used different cases. When we try to execute these, it should reference the same variable with no issue. Yeah, see here. Okay, then do not assign variables the names of specials as automatic variables. So this, we will talk about these variables later. So special, but to be short, these are automatic variables created and used by SAS. So these are like reserved words in SAS. So suggest do not create the same variables as this one. Yeah. So uh, next is the upcase. So more or less upcase is the same as the V7 except that the variable name is uppercase as in an earlier version of SAS. So I had not tried this yet. So yeah, so I'm a SAS 9 guy. So if there are any others here who has been around since V7 or V6 of SAS, let me know. So any specifies that SAS variables names must follow these rules. So the name can begin with or contain any characters including blanks, national characters, special characters, and multi-byte characters. So we don't have the restrictions from the V7 of the Latin characters only. They can be 32 bytes long, so they share with the other options values. The name cannot contain any null bytes. So null characters, I mean blank, or you cannot go away with something like this one. So null, I think it will not work. So let's try that. I have not really explored this one. So you have no value on the left side of the equals sign. Yeah, so yeah, something like that. Leading blanks are preserved, but trailing blanks are ignored. To be honest, I don't know how you can put uh, spaces in the variable name. But yeah, let's try that. So maybe I mean, so here I try AB. So I put a space in there. It just gets trimmed, I guess. And yeah, so for the V7, trailing blanks are ignored. Yeah, I guess when we try to use V7, for example, I put some blanks here. It's just get ignored as well, I guess. Yeah, see, when I reference this value, I mean this variable, doesn't matter if I put space or not. Yeah. So I guess when you open that in the uh, SAS windowing environment, for example. Yeah, so then a variable name can contain mixed case letters. SAS stirs and write the variable names in the same case that is used in the first reference to the variable. However, when SAS processes a variable name, SAS internally converts it to uppercase. Therefore, you cannot use the same variable name with a different combination of uppercase and lowercase letters to represent different variables. So again, same concept. So when we try to create a equals 1 and then for example a equals 1 as well, so they all get converted as uppercase a internally. So whatever is the last reference of the variable, that one will get the assignment of the value. So let's try this one. So you see I have two different uppercasing of AA. Yeah, so when we go to the output, no, use the variable name that's used in the first reference. So sorry, my bad. So SAS stores the first reference. So even if we put here AA equals 3, then for options valid var name equals any, the AA1 will take precedence. So it's the stored value in the dataset. So let me just check one more time if I had the same one with V7. So in V7, first reference, yeah, so first reference as well. So let's try that one more time. Let's see if we had the same understanding. Yep, so if we had same casing or different casing rather, they all get converted internally in SAS. So the first reference of this variable gets the value. So here AA is the final value. AA final value. Yep. Okay, so there's some caution note here. So throughout SAS, using the name literal syntax with SAS member names that exceed the 32-byte limit or have excessive embedded quotation marks might cause unexpected results. The valid var name equals any system option enables compatibility with other DBMS variable naming conventions such as allowing embedded blanks and national characters. So yeah, uh, I guess the valid var name any is the best option if you had national characters or blanks in your variable names. So I just think of something else. So AABB. I don't know if this will work. Let's try. So for example, the variable name is my number. Let's try that if that will work with valid var name equals any. Nope, did not. But I guess when we download something from Oracle, for example, it might work with options valid var name. So because it allows compatibility with other DBMS. And also I missed this note. If you use add characters other than the ones that are valid when valid var name equals 7, then you must express the variable name as a name literal and set valid var name equals any. If the name includes either a percent sign or an ampersand, then use the single quotation marks in the name literal to avoid interaction with the SAS macro facility. So let's try something like that. So maybe we can try this one first if this will work. Nope, it does not. Percent. Let's try. Doesn't work as well. I guess this can come up with other technologies. Then when you load it into SAS, they allow this one. So if we read these tables, for example, from DBMS, then I guess we cannot explicitly just convert that right away, right? So I think they accept that one with percent and ampersand, for example. And then yeah, let's try one more time. I thought of something else. Maybe this will work. If we put the percent in the quote, did that work? Maybe not. I don't know. Well, but to be honest, I don't know if when this will be applicable. I mean, I had not encountered, for example, variables with quotes. Normally, the standard values as outlined here is usually used. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you had encountered such cases. I mean, in your work, for example. Yeah, so that's it for the referencing. No, we had last one. So the valid mem name system option. So you can use the valid mem name system option to specify rules for naming SAS dataset. So the syntax is valid mem name equals either compatible or extend. So compatible is the default system option for valid mem name equals. So let's check that. Uh-huh. Mem name. So extend in Web Studio, but I guess for the generic installation of the uh, SAS, for example, in your Linux or Windows Enterprise, uh, the default is compatible. So I guess this is SAS owned, so they define what the default is. So compatible specify that SAS dataset name must follow this rule. So up to 32 characters long, name must begin with a letter of Latin alphabet or an underscore. Subsequent characters can be letter of the Latin alphabet, numbers, or underscore. So the usual A to Z stuff is the beginning or an underscore. Names cannot contain blanks or special characters except for an underscore. Names can contain mixed case letters, thus internally converts the member name to uppercase. Therefore, you cannot use the same member name with different combination of uppercase and lowercase letters to represent different variables. For examples, customer all represents the member name. However, how the name is saved on the disk is determined by the operating system. So, what this very long text just means is that if you create a dataset named customer, for example, let's try that. A equals 1, run, and I try to update the casing here in the code. So essentially these two datasets refers to the same customer and customer. So when we go to the library work, we only had one customer dataset. So the casing does not matter. They represent one dataset. So if you reference the same dataset, for example, you can use this one, or you can use this one. Customer doesn't matter. They will just reference to the same customer dataset. Yeah. Then the final line is the name. How the name is saved on this is determined by the operating environment. So let's say I had a permanent dataset saved in a libref or test or cert libref, for example. Then the casing will be determined by the operating system. So for example, I try to make a customer, then depending on the operating system, this table will be saved in either this folder by default like this. For example, in Linux or in Windows, by this one, the casing does not matter. It will save this as this one in the disk drive. Yeah. Then extend specifies that the dataset name must follow these rules, can include national characters. The name can include special characters. The name must contain at least one character. 32 bytes. Null bytes are not allowed. Names cannot begin with a blank or period. Leading and trailing blanks are deleted when the member is created. Then, same with the casing. The customer capital C, and all case uppercase customer represents the same member name. So, how the name appears is determined by the operating environment. So, when we use special characters and the default language in the operating system, for example, is English, then they might get represented differently, or the encoding, they might get represented differently. So let's try to, if these special characters will work. I just want to try that. Valid mem name. I did not. No, I mean it's already extended, right? So data sample. Let's try with asterisk, or with, no, not asterisk, question mark, right? No, a unders a. Let's try if this will work. No, it does not work. Include special character. Oh no, except. Yikes. Sorry for that. I'm not reading. I don't know. Let's try. Or special characters. A carat. I don't know special characters. I'm sorry. So maybe we can try include national characters. So alt 165. Let's try this one, if this will work. I hope so. Yeah, it worked finally. So if you're Espanol or Spanish, yeah, this ñ. Yeah, it worked. Yeah. Then the last is um going back. I guess you can test this out yourself depending on your location if this can work or not. I'm just trying to show some examples here. Yeah. Then moving on. So if valid memname equals extend SAS dataset names must be written as a SAS name literal. If you use either percent sign or an ampersand, then you must use single quotation marks in the name literal in order to avoid interaction with the SAS macro facility. I'm having a hard time make this work. Maybe I'll try one more time. Let's put some percent here. A percent. This will work or not. Yeah, it works. So when we use valid memname equals extend. So throughout SAS, using the name literal syntax with SAS member names that exceed the 32 byte limit or that have excessive embedded quotation marks might cause unexpected results. So this is the same with the valid var name. So the intention is to enable compatibility with other DBMS member naming conventions. So yeah, there are cases where in databases blanks are embedded in the column name or the variable name. So this is the intention for these options to allow them to get picked up by SAS. So when to use valid memname? So use valid memname equals extend system option when the characters in a SAS dataset name contains one of the following: international characters, characters supported by third-party databases. So for example, um, those that are not supported by SAS, but you need to calculate something in SAS. So you can use this so that these characters get picked up by SAS. Characters that are commonly used in a file name. I can think of an example of this one. Maybe some spaces. Yeah, it's commonly used. We add space to our files. But yeah, it's good to take note of this, remember this, but I'm personally not would not dig deep into this one because again the exam is very focused on uh, hands-on coding, so maybe you should just only memorize the rules, but you do not need to apply these rules in the exam itself. So yeah, that's it for this lesson. So I preemptively said that one, but we had the valid mem name, so I'm sorry for that. Yeah, again, and thanks for watching. So in the next session we will talk about SAS dataset. So thanks for watching and see you on the next video. Bye bye.